Have you ever wondered if the Bible has principles baked into it that can help you be more successful in everything that you do in life? I discovered something that I want to show you. I found it, and I'm kind of calling this From Psalms to Success. The reason I'm calling it From Psalms to Success is because I found something in the Psalms that has always been there, but it really profoundly hit me recently. I'll tell you what, the verses I'm going to show you when I'm a part of like Christian business groups and stuff like that. And one of the things that they do a lot of times when you join is they want you to give like a bio. And one of the things I always put in my bio, or one of the things they always ask you is to put in your bio is like, what is your life verse? Or what is a verse that really has impacted you? And so I always put Psalm chapter 1, verses 1 through 3. So the very first Psalms out of the book. King David writes in the Psalms, something that I always knew was like a thing about success. But to me, it was more something that I knew in my heart, but I hadn't quite been able to put it in my head to articulate it. So today, I want to do that. So the verses I'm going to go over with you is Psalm 1, okay? Psalm 1, verses 1 through 3. Now, I know that this is my business channel, right? Because I also have some other content out there that's biblically based or whatever. But I don't just call this the Bible. I heard one guy call this one time the Ancient Guidebook to the Supernatural. And I will say this, ever since I truly cut off all other options and I decided that following God and doing things God's way was my best chance at success, I've been blessed in that area more than I had ever been ever before. And so what I could say is that maybe you're not, quite to the point where you're like ready to follow Jesus. That's okay, right? I'm not preaching to you today, but I want to show you anyways the things that God put in here to show us how we can live a better, more fulfilling life. And so Psalm chapter 1, verses 1 through 3, it says this, Blessed is the man who walks not in the counsel of the ungodly, nor stands in the path of sinners, nor sits in the seat of the scornful, but his delight is in the law of the Lord, and in his law he meditates day and night. He shall be like a tree planted by the rivers of water, that brings forth its fruit in its season, whose leaf also shall not wither, and whatever he shall do will prosper. Now, do you want everything that you put your hand to prosper? Well, I'm going to give you right out of these 3 verses, very simple, very basic stuff, but people overlook it and they don't apply it to their life. They don't make it the lens that they look through when they're doing things in their life so that they can have success at whatever it is that they do. So let's look at some do's and some don'ts that we find in Psalm 1 through 3. So we're going to start with the don'ts because it starts with the don'ts, okay? And we're going to and do the do's over here, okay? So over here in the don'ts, the first one is, all right, blessed is the man who walks not in the counsel of the ungodly, right? So don't walk in the counsel of the ungodly, okay? If you're a believer, I don't think I need to say anymore. You kind of understand. If you're not a believer, that's okay too. But you know instinctively that there are people out there that even you would describe as ungodly. And so what happens? There's a lot of people out there with flashy success, some of it fake, some of it legitimate when it comes to financial success at least. We have a tendency as humans to see those shiny objects and want to do whatever it is that they say to do, right? Or be like them. There are people that have very ungodly ways of making money. And obviously we don't want to do those things. So the first thing that you can do is not walk in the counsel of the ungodly. Don't walk in it, right? Keyword being walk. Don't do the things those people would advise you to do. And you know in your heart, right? Everybody kind of has that check in their conscience, right? What's right and what's wrong. And sometimes we sear our conscience with a hot iron, so to speak, in order to do the things that we think would lead to that worldly success or whatever it is. But we want to not walk in the counsel of the ungodly. We want to do the things that we know are right. And the way that you do that, right? Not walking in the counsel of the ungodly. So number 2, nor stands in the path of sinners. So we don't want to walk in the counsel of the ungodly, and we don't want to stand in the path of sinners. All right. I used to have this saying that I used to say it more often, but now, I don't really, I guess my circle of influence is a little tighter now. But I used to say, nothing good happens after like 10 o'clock at night. right? And I mean that, tongue in cheek a little bit. I've been out later than that before. But my point was always like, there's no point in being out that late, because that's when like the stuff that goes down usually goes down. And that was just my way of not standing in the path of sinners. But for every individual, and when I say sinners, I'm meaning people that are doing the wrong thing, people that are within your circle of influence that aren't doing what is right, things that you know that you shouldn't be doing. And so, Jesus himself, right? He ministered to sinners, but he wasn't a sinner. And so just a lot of Christians, a lot of people that don't want to be, quote unquote judgmental, they'll say like, oh, well, Jesus, spent time with sinners and tax collectors and all these people. And while that very well may be true, A, he was Jesus, right? But B, he also didn't say like, hey, let's go hang out at the bar and have some drinks. No, his point to, not that hanging out at the bar and having drinks is a sin. I'm not saying that, by the way, but whatever it is, let's go to the brothel and, hang out. He wasn't hanging out where the sin was going on, right? So maybe he brought the sinners into a home and he dined with them and coached them and taught them and loved on them. But he wasn't going to the places, so to speak, and wallowing in the path of the sinners, right? He was keeping himself out of situations where he knew trouble could happen or would happen. So the first don't in Psalm 1:1-3 was walk not in the counsel of the ungodly. Stop listening to the wrong people. Listen to people that are a good godly influence in your life. Number 2, don't go and be where the sinning is happening, right? Don't stand in the path of sinners. It's just not good, all right? And then number 3 is don't sit in the seat of the scornful, right? So don't sit in the seat of the scornful, okay? Now, it's interesting how this plays out, right? We don't want to walk in the counsel of the ungodly, meaning don't do the things, the counsel that these people say. A lot of these people that are going to say stuff that are ungodly, they're going to tell you advice that they're not even doing themselves, right? Don't stand in the path of sinner, meaning don't be in the place where the sins are happening. And here it is, don't sit in the seat of the scornful, kind of like an armchair quarterback. Like you're not really the quarterback, but you're like giving it as if you are, right? Don't sit in the seat of the scornful. You ever met anybody that's just like negative all the time and it just brings you down? I for sure have been around people that are negative all the time, complaining all the time. They're bitter, they've been wronged in some way, shape, or form, and they complain all the time. And it can just be very, very draining. And so this says don't sit in the seat of the scornful. It doesn't mean that you can't listen to somebody and have compassion on them. What this is saying is don't be that person. Don't sit in the seat of the scornful. Don't be the person that's looking at the world and seeing everything around you that's negative. I was listening to Myron Golden speak the other day, and he was talking about how he was saying like, people think I'm just positive all the time. He's like, I'm not positive. He says, I'm just aware. Aware of what? Aware of all the blessings, right? Aware of the presence of God in his life. So one of the quick tricks of not being scornful is having gratitude. Being grateful for all of the blessings that are going on in your life. You woke up this morning, right? That's a miracle, right? He was talking about, I love this, right? He says, I woke up and I could hear, right? And he said he can make himself listen, but he can't make himself hear. God did that. That was a gift. He can open his eyes, right? And he can make himself look, right? But he can't make himself see. Only God can do that. That's a gift. It's a miracle that he's given us. So that's just, some examples, but not sitting in the seat of the scornful is not being negative and focusing on all of the bad things. It's focusing on the positive things and being aware of the presence of God and the presence of all the blessings that are in our lives and focusing on those things and focusing on how we can get more of those things so we can increase the blessings and decrease, the cursing, so to speak, the things that aren't going well. So that's the don'ts, right? Don't walk in the counsel of the ungodly. Don't stand in the path of sinners. Don't sit in the seat of the scornful. Let's go on over here to the do's, all right? So what does the first do? Verse 2, it says, but his delight is in the law of the Lord, all right? And so do delight in the law, right, of the Lord. All right, and that's the good name of God. That's the 4-letter Yod He Vav He, good name of the Lord. And actually law here is the word Torah. And while law is not a mistranslation of the word Torah. Torah really means teachings and instructions, right? God is our Father, right? He's our heavenly creator. He's the one that is the Father of all of us. And the Torah, right, his law, his teachings and instructions are good. Why? Because he's a good father. Good fathers instruct their children. Parents that don't like their kids, fathers that don't care for their kids, they don't instruct their kids. They let them do whatever they want, and their kids end up like hellions. And we all know this to be true. We've seen it. We know the kids. We know the parents. But those that give their kids law, right, teachings and instructions, right, their kids turn out well. Well, guess what? All throughout the Proverbs, King Solomon, the wisest man to ever live, King David's son, King David wrote this psalm, his son prayed for wisdom, and God gave him not only wisdom, but riches as well. And so delighting in the law of the Lord, right? If our earthly father can give us good instructions, how much better are the teachings and instructions of God, right? So when you get your mind in a place where you realize that the teachings and instructions of God found in his word, right? When we realize how great they are, we really truly start to delight in the law of the Lord. So if I delight in the law, the teachings of God, then, right, I get the things that come in verse 3, and we'll get back to that in a minute. So do delight in the law of the Lord. I would say that when you delight in them, you know what else you get? You start doing them. Because if you're delighting in them, it means that you're not just reading them and like, oh, I'm so excited to read this. No, you're excited to take it and apply it to your life. And when you apply it to your life, that's when you get the things that come in verse 3. The second do was, and it says, but delight in the law of the Lord, and in his law, right, he meditates day and night, right? So he meditates on God's law day and night. All right. So what does this mean? It means whenever you run into this situation, you pull out the law, right? The Torah, the teachings and instructions of God. Whenever you end up in that situation, whoop, you got them in your pocket, right? You pull out the teachings and instructions of God. You have, because you've been meditating on it, you got it off the page into your brain, and then from your brain into your heart, that you master it so that you don't have to use conscious resources in order to use it. You have it almost like in a tool belt, almost like you have a tool belt now of things that you can pull out, that when the time comes and you run into a situation where it's a bad time at work or it's a bad time with your spouse or whatever it is, you have these things that you can now just, oh, I'm ready for this because I've been meditating day and night on the Word of God. This is an awesome thing. The principles in this book are the principles that everybody needs for success. They work for everybody. Praise God, that's awesome, right? So what do I get? If I do these things, right? If I do these things and I don't do these things, then I get some benefits, right? So let's look at the benefits. So benefit number 1, okay? It says here that I'll be like a tree planted by the rivers of water, okay? Like a tree planted by the river, okay? Planted by the river. What does that mean? Well, if a tree is planted by the river, it means that it's getting the vital resource that it needs, water, in order to live, thrive, and grow and bear fruit, right? So it's planted by the river. Why? Because it didn't do these things and it did these things. So you in your life, this could be like, hey, I've got a regular stream. It's interesting. River, stream, a regular stream of passive residual income coming in, right? I'm in the merchant services business. I coach people on how to get into the merchant services business and how to develop a passive residual stream of income so that they can replace their current income with something that they don't have to work for anymore, that it comes in whether they wake up and go to work or they wake up and go on vacation or to the beach or whatever. So planted by the river. So the second thing that you get is it says that brings forth its fruit in its season. So brings forth fruit in season. So guess what? When you bring forth fruit in season, this is pretty cool. there's a season for everything. So like when I'm working and sowing seeds, I then reap the harvest, the fruit of that planting, right? That sowing. And so the law of sowing and reaping is built right in here. And guess what? Those things that I planted will be well watered because I've already got, the stream flowing in. It also says here, right? Number 3, leaf will not wither. Leaf doesn't wither. That means the things that are sustaining me are not going to just go by the wayside. Why? Because I'm not doing these things, I'm doing these things, therefore I'm planted by the river, so I have the water, and my leaf doesn't wither, right? The things that I need in life, they don't go bad, they don't wither because I have these other things. And then it says, number 4, whatever I do prospers. Everything prospers. Praise God. Now think about this for a second, okay? And whatever he does shall prosper. We can take these principles and we can apply them to our lives. Everything prospers. I want everything. This is awesome because it means that anything that I am putting my mind and my heart and my soul into, the things that I care about, when I don't do these things and I do these things in partnership with God, all of those things that I've partnered with God will prosper. Now, the definition of prosper may be different for everybody. Some people it's financial, some people it's having a wife and kids and a family, some people it's impacting lives or whatever, right? Everybody has a difference in success. But I would say that everybody needs money to survive, right? We live on an earth where money is the currency that we use in order to pay for goods and services. All of us need those goods and services as basic essentials. And if we want to do anything else and have money to be able to give to others or support others or make an impact, we need money to do those things as well. And so once you get, planted by the river and you start bringing your fruit in and you're protected from your leaf withering, then you could start thinking about the things that are going to allow you, right? Allow you to do the things that you really hope and desire so that you can prosper. The things that God put on your heart, the things that you're passionate about, the purpose of why you're here, that can prosper now because you have the basic essentials, the foundation taken care of. When I realized this, it changed my life. I really think this is awesome. I wanted to bring it to you guys just as a business community because I feel like when we get this right? When we get this right, we can prosper in everything else that we do. And it doesn't mean that it's a given, right? There's an ebb and flow to life. There's a season for everything. But I will say that he built the universe and he gave us the manual to it. And if we apply the principles that he gave us to his universe, then we're going to be a lot more successful than if we didn't. And that just sounds like a basic thing. So bless you guys. I hope you enjoyed this. And I'll see you guys on the next